Welcome to the Jersey Magazine. I'm your host, Jim Monaghan. This morning, our guest is Dan Goodman. He is the co-owner of Varsity House Gym. They have a location in Orangeburg, New York. They're about to open a second location in Bergen County here in New Jersey, up in Ridgewood. Dan, good morning and welcome.
Jim, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
Now, a lot of our focus on the Jersey Magazine over these first few weeks has been on mental health. And I saw something that was written up about your company, I believe it was on NJ Biz, about the significance and the correlation between mental health and physical fitness. Now, as someone who runs a gym, explain that for us, what you think the connection is.
Well, it could really be multifaceted, Jim. I mean, for a lot of people, the gym becomes that third place. We talk about that all the time. I mean, I know people talk about like coffee shops being the third place, but for a lot of people, it's work, it's home, and it's the gym. And when that got taken away from people, you saw the weight gain, you saw the depression, you saw just people missing that community. And, for us, that third place also could be something like bowling or the bar, things that might be destructive to your body. I think the reason why people love our gym and gyms in general so much, it is a community, and it's a space where people come together and they're working towards building themselves both mentally and physically in a positive way, right? It's not like going to drink beers with your friends and shoot darts. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but it's not a healthy thing, at least physically.
So when COVID hit and everything started to shut down, what happened with you guys?
So our business, obviously, like all, was forced to shut down. On a personal note, my wife was also pregnant. So in the same breath, we were supposed to go on a baby moon to Miami. The trip gets canceled. 2 weeks later, my wife goes into early labor. Everything's fine. My son is fine, but we had that stress and our business closed all within a 1 month period. So I didn't have gray hair going into the pandemic, but I do now. So I actually do now. So it was very stressful, but in terms of the business, I mean, we had a lot of clients that rallied behind us. They said, look, we came out with a plan, said we got in front of it and told everyone, look, we're going to do what we can do. We thought it was going to be the week of wellness, and it turned into months of wellness, which was virtual. We were able to scale, and just like we're doing right now, we just kept our class schedule as it was. We put a coach in front of a screen. We had the camaraderie of just, the chop busting through a screen. We leased out all of our equipment. So our gym was completely bare of weights, bands, kettlebells, chains. We leased it out to everybody free of charge. And we just asked people, hey, look, we're going to discount your membership slightly, but we hope that you'll ride this out with us. And as soon as we get back, to in person, we will. The unique factor in Orangeburg is we do have an outside location. So as soon as that was cleared, we tented the whole thing out. Something that we had never done before, which is here to stay. We have the tent outside right now. But we did scale virtual. We did scale to do things outside. And, if not for our community rallying behind us, we wouldn't still be in business. We would be part of the statistic that is, I think it's almost 30% of all service-based gyms are no longer in business. So we're very fortunate that our clients said, you know what, we will pay for the expertise. We will pay for the community. We will pay for the nutritional advice, albeit online. They still did it. They rolled with us.
We're talking with Dan Goodman this morning here on the Jersey Magazine. He's the co-owner of Varsity House Gym. And we've been talking about different things, mental health and the pandemic and what have you. I thought it was interesting that you made that shift to virtual. How quickly were you able to do that? I know a lot of businesses did. We here at the radio station, we were on a very, very limited number of people who were allowed into the building at one point, a kind of a skeleton crew. And some of us were able to work remotely, but for the most part, I mean, you're in a radio studio, you pretty much have to be on the air. How difficult was it for you to have the business go virtual?
We started to see the writing on the wall because we had a lot of attrition in terms of some members, like just being like, hey, can we pause? What's going on here? And we didn't think that we were going to necessarily be forced to close, but we thought that a couple of weeks out, we're like, hey, is there some type of a virtual option that we could still offer people that might be concerned about it? Obviously, we didn't think what was going to happen. We didn't think we were going to go down that road, but we started making inroads to be prepared. So we got the business suite for Zoom. We started we use a feature called Slack to communicate with our clients, and we started, which we never had before, which is crazy. We started a Facebook members page where we were sharing nutritional advice, mobility advice. We were doing things like a weekly game night just to keep interaction really high. So I would say we were able to scale in a couple of weeks. It wasn't perfect, but we were able to get going pretty quickly. You don't need much as long as you have people that are willing to get out in front of the camera and train others. It was a little kind of weird and unique, but our crew, we have a great crew of trainers, full-time staff, and we had a meeting when we closed and said, this is what we're going to do. And I'm not saying it was a great plan, but we had a plan where I think a lot of people were stifled by, holy cow, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And they waited around. My business partner and I, his name is Joe Riggio, and our staff and our team, we at least decided, hey, this is our plan. This is how we're going to deliver the goods. Let's roll the dice and see what happens. And I'm glad that we rolled the dice, because had we not, I don't know if we would still be in business.
My wife is a kindergarten teacher and left for spring break a little over a year and a half ago, figuring, all right, kids, we'll be out for 2 weeks. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And they brought home some material just in case. And then 2 weeks turned into a whole lot longer. Yep. So now this is starting to hit. And through all of that, we're starting to come out of it. You decide to open up a second facility. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, I think on the heels of all this stuff, I hate to say that a situation, because it's been a tragic situation, but on the heels of it, we've learned a lot about ourselves in terms of what we were doing as a business. We got leaner in some regards. We cut programs that we should have cut a long time ago. And before the show, we talked about it as like, people are able to kind of blame COVID for a reason for taking that next step forward. And it's just an easy time to kind of rewrite your script. I mean, I started in business. I was 22 years old. I'm now 35 with a wife and a son, and my life is different. But my business evolved, but it probably didn't evolve enough. And this kind of gave us that push to keep evolving and keep growing, and show that, hey, if we got through this, the bulk of that, we could do anything. And I think one of the limiting factors for us never opening a second or third or fourth location is it was a mindset. We got comfortable being in our own building. We had a great business going, and it was comfortable. Well, COVID was uncomfortable and taught us a lot about, hey, we can do things and we can expand. And the biggest chokehold is really our mindset towards expansion. So we started looking for new spaces. We found a space, and obviously people aren't opening a lot of businesses, so we got really advantageous lease terms. And outside of just some hiccups getting equipment, it really wasn't that hard to get a lease and get the space that we needed. We had a lot of lead time for getting open in terms of free rent, which always helps. And the one thing that we have, as I've made mention a few times on the show, is we have a tremendous team. Our team was ready for this step. We have some really young team members that have stepped up into some major roles, and they're ready for growth. And the only way to grow is to grow into new spaces. And hopefully over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, maybe I could be back on the show. We'll have 3 or 4 locations open at that time.
I'm glad you mentioned mindset, because it's something that I wanted to bring up with you. And we're speaking with Dan Goodman this morning, the co-owner of Varsity House Gym here on the Jersey Magazine. I'm actually on your mailing list, and you sent something out recently, and it talked about you having to make a speaking engagement and the self-doubt that crept into your head through all of this. Now, I would imagine it's not the first time you've had to do a speaking engagement. And if you've run fitness classes in teaching groups, you're probably used to speaking. But you mentioned keeping the quote unquote head trash out of your head, all of the self-doubt. What do you find to be the biggest obstacle to keeping the head trash out of your head?
Well, I think part of it is knowing that everybody is their own worst critic, right? Like a lot of times, even as we're doing this show right now, at the end of it, I'm like, I got to text Jim and see if I did all right, because it's natural. But when you know that it's natural and that's something that everybody deals with, it's kind of like, okay, well, that's what it is. I mean, what's on the other side of this? Like what's going to happen? Even if I panned, what's going to happen? Like, and knock on wood, like everything's going to be okay. But in terms of your mindset, getting rid of that head trash, and I wrote in the article, is that you start to frame, well, what happens if I do a great job? What happens as it pertains to that speech? What happens if somebody, they take something away from what I have to say and it changes their business, and they email me a year from now saying, hey, thank you so much. That was a profound speech. I wouldn't have done it without you. And I started thinking about some of the positives that could come from that. And I almost start feeling obligated, like I'm going there to help these people. These people need my help. They need to hear our story. They need to realize that, I was in the same shoes that they were in. I was in the same seats literally that they were in only a few short years ago. If I can do it, so can you. And that's what I really leaned into, to say, like, screw the head trash. Like, these people need to hear the positives, because I sat in their same seats. And even on your show right now, I mean, if somebody, is looking to start a business, like, you can do it. It just starts between your own two ears. And that if you believe it can happen, all of a sudden the pieces will start to align and it can happen for you. It's just, it's in your own, you're your own worst enemy many times.
Among the people that you've come into contact with through your business, who do you think was affected most by the isolation of COVID? And you have a lot of virtual clients now, but was it the adults or was it the kids?
I think it was the kids, because the kids, school is meant to be in person. I think as an adult, you can compartmentalize, and we have a lot of kids here that are 16, 17 that miss things like graduation, prom, their senior seasons. You don't get those things back. For an adult, they can compartmentalize to say, well, it's going to go back to normal. Or in some cases, some people like working virtually, and it's not going to go back full time. Like my wife's work, they're not going to go back to the way it was, and it's probably going to benefit her long term. And adults hopefully have an easier time rationalizing the situation and the circumstance. It was very hard for the high school kids, especially in 2020, that time period. Mm-hmm. They really struggled with it. And I'm just saying, in terms of attendance to virtual workouts, it wasn't the same, because their needs is not as much like, hey, I'm doing this for my health and wellness. They're usually doing it for a sport. And when that sport got removed, they said, well, the heck with it. When you have a 35 or 45 or 55-year-old mom or dad, they know, like, hey, my health and performance and my health and wellness, it's all one and the same. I need to stay ahead of this for me. The kids had a tough time with that.
Don't you find kids to be more resilient many times than adults?
Definitely, 100%. And but in this capacity, we had a lot of kids rebound. I think some kids ended up, some of them that might not have played a college sport, they ended up saying, you know what, I can't go out like this. And we've seen the kids rally in a major way this summer. And you start to see some of the adults where COVID is still a lingering thing, that are still not making their health a priority, where like they've gained a lot of weight, or they've stopped doing the things that they were doing pre-COVID, and they're still using it almost as an excuse, like, oh, well, I'll get back to training when this subsides, or, oh, I'll get back to it when school starts, or this, that, or the other. I think now there's been a paradigm shift where in the beginning, I think the kids were affected the most. And now I think the parents, the decision-making fatigue of just this being a lingering thing that we have to deal with, you're starting to see the adults being like, man, like, they're worried about, as a parent, they're worried about, what am I doing with my kids in the fall? Are they going back to school? What are we doing for daycare? And when they start putting all these other things ahead of them, there's nothing left for themselves.
I'm a little lucky in that my kids, all three of them, are older. They're all out of college at this point. But and I've said to them at some point over the past, it's probably the last month I've really started with this. I just don't feel like adulting today. I've had it.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
You just get to that point.
You do. You definitely do. And like it's, the irony is, like, right before this, my mom was a teacher. She retired. My dad's getting to the point where, he's feeling that pressure now as he's in sales. And he's like, I've been doing this for 40 years. I don't feel like doing this anymore because it's challenging. And we're faced with a new set of challenges that never existed.
If I had told you 2 years ago, you were going to face a complete business shutdown, what do you think you might have said to me?
I really don't know. I couldn't ever have imagined that, without getting into politics in any capacity, that would happen in this country in 2020, that we would be forced to shut down. And to be honest, like, I didn't, my wife was pregnant. I didn't want to be like, you're hearing on the news that people were dying and people were getting sick. And it's, as we said, a huge tragedy. Like, I didn't want to be in front of 300 people a day at that time. So, but having to close and do what we needed to do at that time is, 2 years ago, if somebody said that to me, I really would have thought that, I wouldn't think that we would be doing what we're doing today. That's for certain. But when you kind of get in the midst of it and you're in the mud of it, it's like, well, there's only one way to go. I truly love what I do. I've been able to turn a passion into a profession. And to me, there is no turning back. So there's only one way to go. I certainly, have lost a lot of sleep, and I think it's definitely aged me, but, I wouldn't choose this path. But I'm glad that we saw it through, because I think that Varsity House as a company is in probably the best place we've been in years. So it forced our hand to improve some things that probably would have never been improved upon.
I think the businesses that have survived and done the best through all of this are the ones that, like you just said, Dan, have managed to see what's happening and go, well, let's try this, or what if we did that? It's one of the things that we did here at the radio station. We have musicians come in all the time, or we did prior to all of this. And our program director, Terry Carr, who does our midday show, was one of those, well, what if we, and much like you and I are now via a Zoom interview, she started talking with various musicians via Zoom, and they were at home. So rather than being in the radio station, where it's very technical, and so how about the new album? How about the new tour? Right. Their kids are in the background, their dogs are in the background. There's all of this chaos going on. And amidst all that, the artist was actually more relaxed because they were home. They could like, I could just kick back a little bit. And it's actually a feature that I think we're going to keep going with, because it's been very successful. Our listeners love it. The artists like it. And it's a totally different thing than we were doing a year and a half ago. And I think that kind of correlates to what you in your business had to do with going virtual and literally overnight putting that together.
And it's unused capacity, right, Jim? So for you're probably still going to have artists come to the studio because there's a certain component that people like about that. But maybe now, instead of only featuring 1 or 2 guests a week, maybe now you could feature 2 to 4 guests a week, or whatever it may be. And I know in our business, it stripped us to the core to say, well, if we've ever wanted to make a change, the time is now, because we've been stripped to the core, and let's do it. Right. It was a forced change, and we looked at schedule. We looked at every square inch of our facility. Can we rent any space? Can we sell pieces of equipment that we never use? Can we tighten the schedule? And those things all happened. And comfort doesn't lead to change, because change is hard. And certainly the COVID-19 situation was uncomfortable for all.
Well, Dan, congratulations on opening the Ridgewood facility in just a couple of weeks. And for WDHA listeners who want more information about Varsity House, they can go online to varsityhousegym.com. Dan Goodman, co-owner, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning here on the Jersey Magazine, and best of luck.
Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate it.